Welcome back to our channel. I want to thank you for joining. It's important we dive into something very important as why Africa at the moment is sizing up and measuring its geopolitical partners. The problem about why African geopolitical partners referring to African nations as regimes. This is a condescending approach in regards to geopolitics. The nation regards to why countries call their particular partners competitors or might be a country that they consider their geopolitical foes as regimes. It's a condescending approach in regards to how you perceived that particular country or the particular partner you are talking about. African countries across the Sahel have been referred to a number of times, the governments, as regime. The regime in Burkina Faso, the regime in Mali, the regime in Guinea, the regime in Niger. I think this particular approach is not working in the geopolitical circles. I think by actually just naming these countries as regime, it might be regime in your perspective. It might be regime in the way you perceive what something should be called regime should look like, or what something that is democratic should be looked like. We fail to take out in that same equation the reason why this particular survival period or that narrative should not be fitting to this particular situation. Why do you call the countries of Burkina Faso, Niger, Guinea as regime? At this critical time in their history, the regime in Mali, the regime in Iran, the regime in Russia, the regime in a number of countries, you name it. It is a strategy to condescendingly look at your partner as inferior, as if the model that they are having at that particular time does not fit into your frame of reference. If your geopolitical partner's model does not fit into your own narrative, they are a regime in your perspective. But make no mistake, these countries are not regimes in the eyes of their people. These countries have been a long-standing partner with a number of their geopolitical partners for centuries. Some of this relationship never worked. We fail to look at why these countries refuse to be called regimes, because to an extent, they are facing existential threat with regards to where they should be at this particular time. Colonialism has consequences. It has slowed down the development and expansion and growth of a number of countries in the continent of Africa, specifically in West Africa. And for our geopolitical partners to sit comfortably and call Mali, Burkina Faso, that were on an unequal relationship with a major power that has sucked out this particular region for centuries, by calling Burkina Faso or Guinea, Niger, Chad as regime, I think it's a failure in terms of international relations. We fail to understand the strategic problem that these countries have. And the countries have to go on phases to survive the current problems they are having. A number of these big partners used to have regimes that will be considered regimes today in terms of their global governance and their survival in seeking for freedom. These countries were not free in their particular regions, where they were facing existential threat not just from jihad, but from colonial powers that were to an extent not providing them the strategic knowledge they need, the collaboration that they need, the healthcare partnership that they may need, the technology and the innovation that are relevant, the transfer of very important things that could help them grow. So by just sitting comfortably in our capitals and calling these countries as regime, it's a fundamental mistake. It fails to give that particular awareness. It shows a lack of awareness why countries transform to what they are today. Almost every country around the world has transformed at some point in their history, and the countries in the Sahel are no different. We fail to look at the particular problems that are on the table these countries are facing. So you can call them regime. The approach of regime is a condescending historical term that globalize your particular or zoom your partner to fit them into particular context. If we can reduce them to be called a regime, then we are giving them a particular way of being looked at on the global community to look at them. There are challenges in these countries, no doubt. Does everyone in those countries agree with the governmental approach? Not everyone. Does everyone still agree in those advanced nations' own particular approach and model? Not everyone. But we fail to understand the quid pro quo that we talk about in the geopolitical environment, to understand the give and take. What has changed? Why has this country changed all of a sudden? The darling of the Sahelian country, Niger, was a very strategic partner for the United States of America, and the US investing over $100 million drone base in the city of Ouagadougou was not by mistake. It was because the government of the United States believed in their strategic partner Niger to provide them that particular piece of land and to build that massive infrastructure to support other very important things in terms of countering terrorism and surveillance, providing data, providing a lot of information to strategic partners around the world. And today, because of the problems that Niger was facing, their particular decision to move forward to make their own life better, and you consider them as regime, so be it to an extent. Because if it's going to be in that manner, considering countries to be regime, that they cannot to an extent fight for their own survival, that by them fighting for their survival, they will be named as regime, I think we fail to understand the problem at hand. Look at the relationship in terms of trade and business relationship considering those countries in that region. Look at their economic history. Look at their historical information. Consider their strategic development. Look at the particular economy. Look at the healthcare, the social system in those countries. We're in shambles, but they were dealing with one of the most advanced countries in the first world, so to put it in that context, but there was no technology transfer. And because these countries wanted, for the first time, look for freedom, for the first time, understand why they should leave, the first time to rediscover themselves, for the first time to look at what potential they have, for the first time to understand that they can assume responsibility, for the first time they can sit on the same table and make strategic choices for their own country, for the first time they can look for partners, for the first time they can contribute to problems that are affecting them, and you consider these countries to be regime. Regime is a derogatory approach to referring to your strategic partner, whatever the country may be, whatever their decision may be, whatever particular system that they are facing. I think by just going and calling a particular country the regime in Burkina Faso, the regime in Niger, the regime in different other countries that we hear these geopolitical partners throwing this word back and forth, it is condescending in the geopolitical environment. You may not agree with the particular partner's own approach. You may not agree with their choice of decision. You may not agree with why they have made certain choices. But by just naming them to be regime, you are playing to that particular playbook of undermining or basically looking on the other side of the problem, looking away from the particular issue. So you basically put your own interest first as opposed to your partner's interest. That's the reason why the word regime may not sit well in those nations, and you continuously using the words regime to basically address your partners, it is totally disgraceful in terms of how these countries receive it. I wonder why policymakers, senior strategists, advisors fail to actually communicate to their governments that it is disrespectful to refer to a particular country as this. If you're doing that, you want to put them in those different boxes, but these countries have refused to enter into specific boxes which will give them that particular quote as regimes. By calling African nations, a number of them that have rebelled to an extent as a result of their colonial history with a colonizer that has frustrated them for many years, by referring to them as regimes, I think is unacceptable. However, these same countries we are talking about, Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, and a whole lot of other countries around the world that are Africa's strategic partners, They have not said they don't want to work with the big partners, the big players, Russians, Chinas, the United States of America. They have accepted to work with these countries even today, even tomorrow. But it should be on a win-win partnership and on their own terms. By foreseeing that these countries are regimes as a result of them making their own strategic choice for their own survival, it's condescending in regards to why we perceive certain nations to be looked at based on their model as regimes. The word regime has been thrown across there in the geopolitical environment without any impact. But I think for what we are hearing in the geopolitical circles, this reference, that's why the country of Niger was very furious when the United States instructed them on who to engage with, who to partner with. They moved swiftly to condemn the United States and move forward to actually decide that the United States leave their country. These are some of the condescending conversations that we've seen in the geopolitical circles, and the reason why putting the word regime on the table in terms of strategic relationship and conversation will not drive forward the different partnership around the world. I want to thank you for watching. Let me know in the comment section what you perceive in regards to why Africa's geopolitical partners refer to those countries as regimes. The regime in Zimbabwe, the regime in Niger, the regime in Burkina Faso, the regime in Mali, the regime in Guinea, the regime in Tehran, the regime in different countries. So this particular conversation, there are different ways to communicate with your partner. You can refer to them the way you really want to refer to them as a nation in a respectful manner, but you disagree with that particular position. By just calling them regime, it's not the best communication tool regards to our strategic relationship. And it leaves a number of foreign experts and ambassadors to explain themselves why they are in those countries. They are being consulted to explain. That's why the former United States of American ambassador, Charles Ray, in the country of Zimbabwe, came out clear once and said their partners fail to understand how African governments feel or how their African partners feel in a number of communications. That's why we see at the moment the current diplomat in the country of South Africa from the United States has resigned as a result of this particular approach in dealing with the continent of Africa. I want to thank you for watching. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think regards to this particular conversation. I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.